Okay, so let's start. So what I did was I figured out I needed a form to create the awning over the top of. And I had these styrofoam balls, and they're the perfect size width-wise. I'm guessing that these are probably 4-inch balls. You can see how they fit in the palm of my hand. And I'm using 1/4 of this ball. So I had to first cut it in half. And there's the half, as you can see. So one ball gives you 4 awnings. And it fits perfectly right above the window. The window falls just about 1/3 of an inch in from each side, which is a really good proportion for the window. The next thing I did was cover it with foil, and I did that so that the next step won't stick to this. When I applied the foil, I just used a piece of regular kitchen tin foil. And when I put the foil on, I had to really work to suppress the wrinkles because this is a curved surface. I ended up with a whole bunch of wrinkles along the bottom, and I didn't want the wrinkles. So once I got the foil in place, I just used a little, this is a little piece of onyx stone that I have knocking around, and you could use a coin or anything like that to burnish the foil so that there's no wrinkles at all. This surface is really nice and smooth. I didn't want any irregularities, and I think that's probably going to be an important step because the fabric is going to be molded to this surface, and it's going to pick up the shape of anything that's underneath it. Now, these awnings realistically can either be static, so they're put onto a frame, or they can fold up, and you'll often see ribs. So they fold up like a concertina or an accordion, and you'll see the ribs of what happens with each section, and they all stack against each other and fold up against the house. I want to create the illusion of ribs, so I'm going to use this cord, and it's just a fine cord, and I'll divide this off in sections and glue it down in place like this. And I'll probably have one on the top, one on the bottom, 2 in between, one in the middle, and then 2 in between. The more that I have, the more realistic it's going to look. And I think gluing it down is the best solution at this point. Once they're glued in place and the glue has dried, then I'm going to apply my fabric over the top of this. But I needed a paper pattern. So let's put that aside for a second. So I took a paper pattern off of this shape. It's 1/4 of a sphere. I had no other way to measure it other than I got a piece of brown paper and I found the center point. Found the center point of my brown paper, and I put the brown paper down, lined up the center point, and I basically put a mark on my paper, and I left about 1/4 of an inch all the way around because that'll be my fold over. And I drew a little line following this curve until I reached the center point. And I marked that center point. My hand is moving. I marked that center point right about there. And I did the same on the opposite side, marking the center point. Once I had that shape, which is that shape, I folded the paper in half and I repeated it on the other side. So this is my paper pattern, or my cutout for the fabric. I do have a fair amount of these samples. These are fabric swatches from, I think, the 1980s. Okay, so at this point now, I have glued the cording onto the front of this, and I've used one on the bottom, one on the top, one in the middle, and one to divide on either side. So I've used 5 of them in all. I've dried it with my heat gun, and they feel pretty good, but I'm thinking that I'm going to cover this with a piece of saran wrap so that removal of the fabric, because this is kind of like my mold underneath, and I think the saran wrap is going to facilitate removal a lot easier than trying to peel it off once it's glued down. And I want to just show you, let's see if you can see this here on the camera. Above the window, see how nicely that fits? It's just the right size and proportion to the window. And I think the ribs on it give it a little more realistic touch. And my reasoning behind the ribs is so that once this fabric is set over the top of it, I'm going to use a mixture of glue and water to stiffen the fabric. Once this is set over the mold, the ribs, I don't know if you can see them, but I'm going to press the fabric right up against the ribs so that the ribs end up as markings on the fabric as it dries. At least that's my hope. But you can see how when I put on the ribs, they all came to the same pivotal point on the end, like that. They radiate out from the same point. So I can either make one and make one awning at a time, or I can make a whole bunch of these. I think I need 7 in all. And this only took me 5 minutes to make. So I think I'll end up making one for each window. I can always use them again. And that way all my awnings will be dry at the same time. So I will be back to show you how I stick the fabric to this with the stripe running down the center.